Commissar Vladislav looked down from the top of the hill just outside of Malabolja Penitentiary at the blasted orc formations. The suicidal charge of the explosive-laden penal battalions had taken its toll, and now it was time to wipe these greenskins off the planet. "Advance with bayonets! Fire on their positions! For the Emperor! For Infernus! For the 26th! Warboss Blokkhed stood at the bottom of the hill, his face bloodied and battered from the explosion. He wiped the blood from his face and casually spat out a few teeth. The Humies weren't charging. The Warboss could tell they didn't want to engage the orcs in melee until after their numbers had been thinned first. "Zogan cowards. Fine. Slow-moving gits is slow-moving targets." The Warboss raised his twin-linked big shooter above his head and fired it defiantly with a mighty war cry. "War!" This rallied the boys to him as they reformed their lines and prepared to charge. But the gesture was not just one of defiance. It was also a signal. Shells from the looted basilisks began to rain among the infantry in their columns of tanks. Where they struck, platoons were blasted apart and chimeras were turned into smoking craters alongside with the men. One struck Vladislav's Baneblade, the Emperor's Contempt, and the monstrous tank didn't even seem to notice as it plowed through the smoke and the shrapnel. The Commissar opened the gigantic tank's hatch and yelled his challenge to Blokkhed. The Warboss turned and saw his boys loading into trucks and other vehicles as they prepared to charge. Blokkhed ran towards his favorite battle wagon, the Skull Cracker, and grabbed 2 fistfuls of bloody corpses along the way. He hurled the gory things at the battle wagon, spattering blood all across the hull. "Read it up, boys! Faster is crumpier!" The other orcs followed the Warboss's lead and hurled more pulped bodies at the battle wagon to make it more red. Blokkhed hopped atop the battle wagon and roared again. "War!" The Skullcracker made a straight beeline for the Emperor's Contempt as the rest of the orcs in their vehicles surged to follow. One of the madder truck boys pulled ahead and cut the Warboss off from his desired target. The Warboss was about to fire on the upstart for daring to come between him and his prey, but in a single shot from the Emperor's Contempt, blasted the ramshackle truck to pieces, clearing the way to Blokkhed to meet Vladislav head-on. The 2 hulking war machines exchanged fire as shells smashed into the heavily armored vehicles. The orc main gun shuddered the Baneblade for a moment, and large chunks were blown from each vehicle. The Skullcracker never slowed for a moment, bouncing erratically across the rough terrain of the hill. The engines screamed and poured out black smoke as the battle wagon set itself on a ramming course for the Emperor's Contempt. "He intends to ram me with that scrap pile? Disgusting. Fine. This creature wishes to fight us? We will meet his pathetic challenge. Charge!" The Baneblade lurched forward as it turned to meet the Skullcracker, which had caught fire at this point. But the bestial, orcish scrap monstrosity refused to die and charged like a wounded boar. There was a sickening crunch of metal as the 2 metal titans smashed into each other. The Baneblade was larger and was heading downhill, and despite the great speed of the Skullcracker, the Emperor's Contempt won the battle of force. However, the Skullcracker won the battle of leverage as its ripper slid beneath the Baneblade, causing the super heavy tank to roll over the orc battle wagon, crushing its main gun and gunner in the process. Blokkhed managed to leap out of the way as the Emperor's Contempt slipped over the back and tumbled off of the Skullcracker, rolling once before landing back on its treads, also rendering its main gun useless. Vladislav also leapt free from his vehicle as he strode forth to meet Blokkhed. All around them, orcs and humans clashed and their blood spilled, but between these 2 vehicles, the Warboss and the Commissar had their arena. Blokkhed flexed his claw as Vladislav revved his chainsword. I promised I would mount your head on my bane blade if you betrayed me. I always make good on my promises. Quit your yapping, Vladislav, and let's get to fighting. Just as the two were about to begin their duel, there was a huge, echoing boom that shook the earth and caused the orcs and guardsmen to lose their footing a bit on the hill. A few fell tumbling down. Another boom. And another. Then, cresting over the western hills, framed by a blood-red setting sun, it came. One of the guard machines had come. It bristled with spikes and marks of corn, corpses and skulls adorned its frame, and it had come to bring doom to both the greenskins and the Imperium. The servants of chaos swarmed at its feet, screaming their lungs out for the blood god. Not only cultists, but great engines of war, and the mighty corrupt Astartes as well. Vladislav's face was impassive and resolute. His will was set in stone. Blokkhed only sighed. Zog.